Okay, hello friends. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. I hope you could hear the music from the previous little video that you saw there. New season Tim Kirby Russia, new old concept. From the beginning of this channel, I sort of promised that I would try to look at sort of the left and right political dynamic in America and use all the experiences and knowledge I've gotten professionally writing about politics in Russia for many years to maybe kind of come up with some new ideas. And well, I don't know. I think maybe with the situation with the war or something else has kind of got me distracted. So anyways, today, for your enjoyment or for your enjoyment to write nasty comments later, this is part one of a special series of live streams that I'm going to call Eurasian Ideas. And we're going to take a look at some ideas and see how they can be basically what spice Russia and some of the other nations of the Eurasian landmass can add into these ideas, because ultimately, as we are living in this interesting 21st century where the West is in decline, we have the rise of the BRICS. Still, if you think about things ideologically, BRICS may be rising economically. One could even argue militarily. Of course, BRICS is a military organization. Let's just say the Global South. The Global South is definitely, let's just say, on the rise. But ideologically, it really isn't. There really isn't particularly large competing ideologies or even visions about how we're going to be living in the 21st century. So we need to get into that. That's going to be, as me as a resident of the Global South, that's surprisingly cold. We've got to do our part to try to work out some new ideas. And today's topic is about the idea of equality, a little bit of equality versus equity, which is a real hot topic, or at least it has been in the Western world for a long time. Now, equality and equity are fancy pants words. Let me just make sure I get your comments here. Anyways, okay, here we go. Good. Anyways, equality and equity are sort of fancy pants ways of saying equality of opportunity versus equality of results. Some people accuse the rainbow-haired crowd of using the word equity to sort of mask that sort of equality of results, sort of communistic way of looking at things. But I think when we talk about equality, first off, we have to say that it isn't surprising that human beings have this sort of this idea of equality, which really wasn't a part of the majority of human history. Boy, when it did come around, people really gravitated to it. And it's kind of not surprising. It's something that sounds nice. I think also in our minds when we talk about equality, we generally kind of put that equality bar to sort of medium-high standard. Like, if we're all going to be equal, this is a good equal. You know what I mean? People who fought the communist revolutions didn't think, we're going to fight real hard and risk our lives to be permanently lower middle class. Or, I'll put it this way, in certain aspects of life in North Korea and Cuba, maybe even low, in poverty. But anyways, I'm definitely not an expert on North Korea and Cuba. Maybe I'm missing something. So, but anyways, this equality idea, it sounds nice. You could even look into, our ancient religions that no matter what happens on Earth, when it comes to Christianity, all men are sort of equal in heaven. Of course, the early church and the earliest Christians, if you look at the stories of the Bible or the entire, Bible or the Quran, you don't really see a whole lot of beating the drum of the word equality, but it is kind of, again, implied that in heaven all things are made right, and that all men are ultimately equal, or that all men, because in Islam and Eastern Orthodoxy, all of us human beings have free will, and that gives us the opportunity to be good or bad on roughly equal terms, because, again, certain forms of Protestantism would not agree with this, but for the religions in Russia, if you're dirt poor or you're super rich, your ability to be a good person is not really affected by that status very much, okay? If you're put in a leadership position, that's a little bit harder, but still, Christianity and Islam Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Islam would see no problem with that. Okay, so here we go. Equality is something that sounds nice. It's been with us then since the dawn at the very least, the dawn of monotheism. Maybe there's someone here who's listening who's like, but in the Bhagavad Gita, or however that's pronounced, they had equality too. Maybe. Definitely not the expert of Eastern religions here, but let's just say it's an ancient concept that was definitely in people's minds. Here comes the modern period, the Industrial Revolution, and all of a sudden this becomes a real nice sounding word or slogan that people used. Because wasn't that part of the three things of the French Revolution, which was like liberty, was it liberty, equality, and fraternity, or was it liberty, freedom, eternity? I think it was equality. So, anyways, that's about 300 years ago. So, as you can see, equality, big thing. Okay, we've established that. Cool. People like equality. But the question is, and again, the sort of debate we're having in modern times is the more classical liberal, which many of you are. You don't like the word liberal, but the classical liberal is your sort of founding fathers, old-timey America, Western, Voltaire, type of person, right? That, we believe in individual rights. And as long as everyone has the same individual rights guaranteed to them, then it essentially makes us all equal before the law. And that's your equality dose, and that's awesome. And then, for the most part, you get into the more socialism sort of oriented people, softly putting it, who then are like, okay, well, even though everyone's maybe technically has the same rights under the law, obviously some people are really rich, and they come from privilege. And so the only way to attain equality is to make everyone have kind of the same stuff. Which, if you live in Russia, you've gotten the opportunity, although you know what's going to suck is in a couple generations, you won't be able to talk to anyone who really lived through communism. But I've had the chance to talk to a lot of people who did, especially when I first got here. That was a big sort of topic of mine, and sort of be on the inside of it. One of the main things that they really tried was to sort of have an enforced form of that equality of outcome, kind of. Because salaries for dangerous jobs tended to be higher. Salaries for jobs with low danger tended to be, and especially that required zero effort, tended to be very low. So there was like a salary sway. There were some differences between people. But ultimately, the Soviet Union kind of wanted to have all apartments meeting the standards of this sort of minimum amount of space that a person per person that lives there that needs to be there. And if there's more people in the family, the apartment's bigger. If there's less people, the apartment's smaller. Of course, it didn't always work out that way, but you see what I mean. The cars were generally designed also to be sort of small, and that everything was to be made to be sort of simple and basic in form, and that this is all part of this greater ideology, is this sort of abandonment of luxury. But if you also talk to people from the Soviet Union, this high-minded idea did not really go along well with human nature when it comes to status. One thing we're going to talk about in Eurasian ideas, ironically, is a little bit about how sex plays into things. And part of the male sex drive is showing that they have status. Men of status, I'll put it this way, they're the ones who have the kids, and their genetics go on into the future. And so there is a very strong sort of genetic drive, especially of men, but women have it too, about showing off and having status. So even in the Soviet Union, when people were exposed to this, probably the biggest attempt in human history to have equity on a grand scale, legally enforced equity, everyone was still trying to show off. Any guy with a car who could actually afford it and put together I'll put it this way, go through all the necessary hoops to jump through to have that car, that was the cool guy. Whoever had the boots from Czechoslovakia, you know who you were. Those boots from Czechoslovakia, they put you in the cool kids club. Jeans from the United States, which I've been told, and I hear different amounts about this, but I think the average salary in the Soviet Union was 150 Soviet rubles a month, and I think a pair of jeans, like real American Levi's, that were sort of smuggled in would cost like 100. So imagine 2/3 of your monthly salary for a pair of jeans. For the average American, that would be something like $2,000 pants or something like that. That's pretty intense. But again, someone could say that fashion isn't necessarily connected to status, but they're dumb. They could also say that fashion isn't necessarily connected to sex, and they're also dumb. Um, and so a lot of these things were this sort of part of this human, especially male drive to show status and where they're at. And you'll really see throughout the entire history of the Soviet Union that everyone was trying to buck this system, to always fight this enforced status system. And ultimately, especially when you needed when you needed to pay people a lot of money to make them go up to the absolute insane north and do nuts stuff like go get oil from the Arctic Circle, you kind of had to pay them more. And so a quality of, and also too in the Soviet Union, not they had universities with the free education and all that stuff, but they did let everybody in. So even then, they kind of knew that there'd be sort of different educational levels. Some people would have to go to a university. Other people would have to, spend 2 years in the army, this, that, and the other. So if you look back at Russian history, essentially this equity concept of trying to find some sort of system or algorithm to correct the unfairness of birth or status of birth or other issues ultimately failed. But at the same time, you remember the Soviets had a lot of propaganda that was a little bit based on truth, and we can say that definitely there are a lot of examples of people in the Western world who, despite in theory having exactly the same rights on paper, we all know who has more rights. We all know that if you can hire a really hot shot legal team, your chances in court over anything are way better. And in fact, your chances of being able to sue someone over nothing and destroy their lives are also much better. As everyone notices, the free attorneys provided by the state aren't particularly great. That's one example. We could even see a lot of, let's just say, hypocrisy because a certain president's son is a known crackhead. Zero punishment for it, and yet the other crackheads go to jail, and they go to jail in rough conditions. So there's a lot of things that all of you know about the Western world where, in theory, on paper, we're all equal, but in fact, we're not. A lot of people are fine with that, and that's cool. But anyway, so we kind of took the first sort of step of this equality and this equity thing. We're going to get to what Russia has to offer later. But another thing we kind of also need to take a look at if we're going to discuss ideas coming from the Eurasian continent is that one of the things that kind of comes with both equality and with equity, again, I kind of mentioned this as a certain sameness, okay? And a certain, maybe let's just say, lack of hierarchy. So in Western-style democracy, the idea is that if we all have the same rights, that we're all individual units, individual citizen units and all this stuff, and we're all exactly the same, which is in some ways kind of a strike against hierarchy, then that's awesome. And with the equity crowd, or especially the communist crowd, we should say, theirs was really an idea to sort of, we'll get to communism. Let's just go back in time here. I'm kind of explaining this part badly of what I wanted to say. Okay, well, let's go back in time to the very shift from when we were hunter-gatherers to when we were starting to have like farms and all that other good stuff, right? I don't know, ancient Rome or Mesopotamia or ancient China or wherever. We kind of see the society that's shaped like a pyramid where you have the overwhelming majority of the people are at the bottom, be they some sort of, I don't know, what you want to call them, peasants. There are definitely plenty of slaves. Nearer to sort of the top of the pyramid, sort of if you have the bottom is really, really big and fat and is the majority of people, you have sort of a fairly large minority, let's just say a vast minority of people who are, your artisans, tradesmen, the military, people who are definitely, let's just say, a major step above the general masses there, but they're still the minority. And then beyond that, you sort of get into perhaps the nobility and the priesthood, which have taken kind of various forms over the year. And then our social pyramid stops at the top. There's a very capstone, which is your pharaoh, your emperor, your king, the sort of living embodiment of the state that gets their face on the coins. Of course, there are definitely some times, like within Japan, when sort of they had an emperor, but he wasn't really the emperor. Or, you know, you have some other figurehead sort of leader who's maybe not really the power base, but it seems like more or less, even in our modern times, even after, you know, generation upon generation of democracy, we still tend to sum up the United States with the face of the president, even though we're supposed to be really proud that we have this gigantic system that has checks and balances and all that. We still put a face on our pyramid. We have a shiny capstone, which I believe the fancy term for is pyramidion, but capstone's easier to say. So anyways, that was your ancient times. Okay, so we go into medieval times, and we start to just do the same thing, but we change the names. The overwhelming majority of the people who toiled, keyword today is toiled at the bottom, that's where you get into your serfs. You have your feudal serfs who work the land. The land belongs to who? Generally the king or lord or whoever. But of course, there are some craftsmen who are not toiling in the same quite way. You're getting into, then you have your knights, who sort of represent what the Roman legionnaires would be for Rome. And sitting above the vast minority part of the pyramid, near to the top, you then get into the clergy and the aristocracy, who are, again, a very, very teeny tiny percentage of the population. This is not a lot of people. You know, you could, especially in medieval times, in a given kingdom, you could probably fit them all in one room. So, and of course, at the capstone, you have the king or the lord. Boom. Okay. Time goes on. And we have revolutions. The first revolution that comes around is our sort of liberalism revolution, is our revolution of the individual rights and all that. And over time, we still see that even as things move on, I mean, let's take a look at, you know, the United States post-World War II. Well, people are certainly living much nicer than their feudal serf ancestors, that's for darn sure. But if you kind of look at things from the structure of society and maybe equality and sort of social caste, essentially nothing changed. The overwhelming majority of people have to toil, be they to pay for their property taxes or their new fancy 57 Ford or whatever. And then there's some people who are part of a vast minority who are certainly above them in sort of status and power, who are, let's just say, more your executives, the small business owners that are, well, successful small business owners. Again, the military, so on and so forth, are sort of, again, sitting above this group at the bottom. But you also have to remember that in an ancient society and in a medieval society and in 1950s America, it's that bottom base of the pyramid that really society sits on. That's really where, well, in medieval times, where the food comes from, thus the ability for society to survive, or in 1950s America, that's where the real wealth comes from. Okay. And of course, near to the top of our 1950s American pyramid, we get into the political elites, well, they wouldn't be billionaires, they would be the, what we used to call millionaires, the, let's just say the real industrialists and all that, the people who are in the ultra elite and so on and so forth. And again, this kind of setup in capitalism is something that Marx and all these communists always want to defy. Basically, their idea is if we have this, they don't say this, but I think what ultimately they think is that, okay, we've had this pyramid of structure where the overwhelming majority of the people, who are the real, to be honest, actual wealth producers, tend to transfer a lot of their wealth to the top. And depends how you look at it, do they get much back? Do the peasants get much back from the feudal lord? Maybe that's another discussion for another day. But anyways, that's the sort of communist argument. So the communists, again, they don't say this per se, but essentially the idea is knock off the top of the pyramid, so it just becomes a big, long, horizontal block of only the people at the bottom. And again, one thing I kind of just forgot to mention is that when we get to terminology, we have in the ancient world kind of, we might say peasants. The medieval world, we have serfs. Then we get into this idea within America in the 1950s is the toiling masses are now called the middle class, which sounds nicer. And then the toiling masses in the Soviet Union were, of course, the working class, so which fit the genre and jargon, I should say, of the 1800s there. But the attempts of communism to create this big plank society essentially failed because there was still a Communist Party member and a non-Communist Party member. I believe the Communist Party was roughly 10% of the population of the Soviet Union. So that kind of represented what I again called this vast minority of people who are not really part of the elite, but certainly more important and influential than your average Joe out there. They're not quite out there toiling to create the resources to keep the state going. The role of the clergy in the ancient world was pretty defined, but in some ways, the clergy was sort of the main means of sort of ideologically holding the state together, and especially for a means of communication, especially between power and the masses. Someone could even say that a Catholic medieval mass would have been sort of like the watching the news of its time. So maybe in some ways you don't quite have this wealthy clergy of the past, but it kind of is, I think, maybe changed form into somewhat being the media, or still something in the realm of this idea, projection, justification for the state sort of thing. Because remember, the medieval state was justified by the church. And even to an extent, the Romans believed that if the gods didn't favor the emperor, it might be time for an assassination. So we can see that again. And of course, within the Soviet Union, despite the fact that there's this idea that, it's going to be this working class and the dictatorship of the proletariat, another term for the people at the bottom, the proletariat over itself, it still needed one central figurehead. It needed the capstone. So when we look at these models, we've essentially seen that human beings, despite a lot of death in the last 300 years, to create some sort of different system that defies this pyramidal structure, after you have really embraced living in Russia and embraced a lot of the more, let's just say, nihilistic or fatalistic tendencies in Russian culture, you can kind of see that ultimately nothing's changed. And that if we're going to talk about, again, equality and equity in terms of where the global south is going, we're going to have to kind of accept the fact that we live in a hierarchical society, and that hierarchy isn't some sort of social construct. It isn't some sort of... it's a feature, not a bug. I don't really like that expression, but it suits... Excuse me. Little dinner's coming back on me. But it sort of suits what we're talking about here. Okay? And again, if we're going to go back to, and especially like in Russia, we always talk about we're for a society of traditional values. Well, before the modern era and people became obsessed with equality in this world and not in the afterlife, people in medieval times are pretty aware of the hierarchy of things. But again, we have to take a more realistic and unbiased sort of look at medieval times. I'd really recommend, if you're on YouTube, trying to watch some YouTubers who actually talk about medieval history from the standpoint that they like it. Because a lot of our opinions about the medieval world were created during Victorian England, maybe the Victorian era, generally by people who would be classical liberals. Why? Because they needed to demonize the previous system and, tell everyone how awesome things are now and how liberalism is amazing. And so, stuff like for example, as a stupid example, but like the torture device, like the Iron Maiden was like never used. And a lot of stories of medieval torture and the way things were are essentially like Victorian era exaggerations, because they didn't seem to care about exaggerating against something they felt was backwards and stupid anyways. So a medieval society, if you listen to historians who know what they're talking about and have a positive view of medieval history, kind of define it that in a lot of ways you had a society where you had a lot of unspoken responsibilities between each sort of serf and what they would have to give to the Lord, the protection the Lord would have to provide to them, and other things. Of course, sometimes the lords would provide for a small fee the ability for the peasants to bake their bread, so there might be an official bakery. Sometimes they got a little exploitive with that. But other examples would also be like, in the olden days, if your brother died and he left his wife and she didn't really have much family, very often she'd become your problem. So there was also this very detailed sort of look about who's responsible for whom in a medieval society. In fact, you'll probably hear me mention this a lot in this series coming up, but the very first set of Russian laws, what did people think was the most important thing to put into the first set of written laws? Inheritance. Who's responsible for this thing when this person dies? Who's responsible for this kid? Who's responsible for that? Who gets this thing? Who gets that thing? That's what was probably what was really important about a medieval society. And to be honest, for a lot of you, for the men anyways, this should actually prove to be a little bit exciting, because in a medieval society where you have an extremely large amount of responsibility on basically the man of the house, that makes us more important. As we go into this sort of modern era where we're all sort of exactly the same, this whole, at least in the legal rights and legal responsibilities way of doing things, that kind of eliminates men from really being men and really being leaders or the head of the household, this, that, and the other. When they set up America, they only wanted the landowning men to vote. Something to think about. But anyways, I'm digressing a little bit from our concept here. Now, the one thing is first off, maybe if we're going to form this some sort of new ways of thinking to counteract the West from maybe the Eurasianist school of thought, the very first thing, like I just mentioned, medieval times shouldn't be too bad for you, especially if you're thinking of things from a Russian perspective, because Russia was born of the medieval times. So you should have a more positive view of the medieval times. But you should also really accept that the reality of things is that there's going to be a hierarchy. There's going to be a hierarchy in society. Now, some of you might be saying, well, you're going to take the jump, because remember, when we, as in the royal we, of people who challenge liberal ideas, the immediate jump in a lot of people is that means you have to be some sort of evil fascist. So, for example, if I'm trying to explain to you that no matter what we do, there's going to be a hierarchy in society, and achieving equality is going to be ultimately impossible because some people have more power, some people have less power. So the next logical jump that people have is going to be, aha, that means you support some sort of futuristic caste system. You want to live in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, this, that, and the other. And that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, that is the exact opposite of everything. Just because there's a hierarchy in society doesn't mean that there has to be a caste system. See, the caste system is sort of the opposite of what I'm saying. Right now, we sort of live in a delusion where it's like, there's no social hierarchy. We're all technically the same on some sort of piece of paper. Yay! Or like in the Soviet Union. Because we're sort of all forced to be economically similar, that means that I'm just as important and powerful as Stalin is. No, you're not. Okay, that's the fantasy there. The caste system presents the exact opposite fantasy. It's like, well, society seems to exist in a hierarchy, which means that sheerly by birth or by some other mechanism, no matter if you're talented or if society... No, you stay in this spot. You're not moving, pal. You're born in this spot. You are going to be in this spot forever. It essentially takes this tendency of human structure and tries to force it into a very jagged box that it doesn't necessarily belong in. Because as we've seen throughout all history, as Russians say themselves, the grandsons of great men are traitors. Meaning that very often, one of the real problems in like the old school days was that, okay, we have a good king, and then he has a son, and then maybe he has another son who is physically unhealthy, or doesn't want to be king, but he kind of has to, and you see the problem. Or the classic of, sometimes I think people, judging by some historians, they sort of overinflate it, but it's kind of like, well, who was the general in the British Army, the old of the British Empire? Who gets to be the army officer? Well, one of the relatives of the previous general. You know, whether he's good or not, that's a little bit of another story. To what extent the British actually, it seems like they did try to filter out some of the least desirable trust fund kids of their days, but not always. So some of the really trying to force this natural human hierarchy that we sort of form on our own into some sort of really controlled system also sucks. It's also a lie because things don't work that way. Sometimes people who just sometimes talent kind of comes from the bottom or comes from the top, or people can shift from one to the other. From what I've been told, a lot of my ancestors were all mercenaries. Okay, I have zero interest in the military. So in a sort of caste system society, that would be, it would be like forbidden. It's like you must go into the military, even if you don't have the spirit for it, or especially I lack the mentality for it. Yeah. So again, I am not arguing for some sort of caste system, but it's more sort of an acknowledgement of the way things actually are. In fact, unfortunately, because no one can be an expert on everything, if you remember back, you've probably heard about the expression of like the first, second, and third estate, where like in France, before the revolution, they kind of wanted to have these discussions between groups of society, where I believe the first estate was like the nobility, and the second estate was the clergy, and the third estate were the masses, the serfs and all that. Which is kind of interesting, because if you think about it, in terms of their like power within society, yeah, there's way physically more serfs, but ultimately their big ball of power kind of works out to be somewhat equal to the entire clergy and the entire aristocracy. So it's one of those things where if you kind of think about it, in some ways that system, if it would have been maybe worked out better, something interesting about that. Something that's actually fair, in a way. Another thing I kind of want to get into about this again is that, again, something Russian is that people say, again, I just gave the last stream we did was about about the speech I gave about who are the Russians, and in a lot of ways they don't have good answers for that question, and that's a problem. But one answer that Russians tend to give about who they are, which is, it's a vague answer, but it's an interesting answer for our discussion today, especially if we are in the West are so used to looking at things as equality being this individual rights, everyone has the same rights way of looking at things, and in our modern times we're again forced sort of almost back in time to answer the question of the equality versus equity debate, okay? But Russians, they always say that a real Russian person believes in fairness. Oh. Now that's interesting. And that's kind of the crux of what I want to talk about today. Because, let's just say there's an agreement between a parent and a child. Okay, they make an agreement. Could that agreement really be equal? Well, again, if you'd look at it from the sort of standpoint of the equality crowd, they'd say, well, yes, because the child and the parent have the same rights. They're both human beings. But then our equity crowd would say, of course not, because the parent has all the money, they have the age and the authority and this, that, and the other. The kid, if the kid has no money, how are they going to make any decisions? And then the equity crowd would say some sort of ridiculous nonsense that maybe the government needs to step in to be able to represent the child or do something in order for them to be able to make an agreement on a level playing field with their parents, something very bureaucratic and very terrifying. That's usually the way the equity crowd goes. But if a parent and a child make an agreement and it suits them both, what if and of course the parent has more power and has more authority, but both sides like the deal, we could consider it to be a sort of fair deal, right? Oh. And here we go. And especially, too, if you think about it under the law, well, who has more obligations to whom? Obviously, the parent, I'll put it this way. The parent should have more obligations under the law to the child than the child to the parent. But ultimately, that's fair. even though they're really not equal or equitable. No, that can't be the word. Or equity-filled. I think that's kind of where we're going. That if we look at our inescapable pyramid of society, well, what if we stop living in the illusion that we're all equal and we're not? And we stop living with the illusion that we can somehow, especially through taxation, make it so that way there is no more pyramidal, hierarchical aspect to society, which is really, really stupid. Say we ignore all that, but we accept sort of things the way they are, which leans a little bit towards this thing with this whole caste system, but doesn't say we're going to enforce anything to an extent, but thinks that then we have to think about things in terms of fairness. Because one thing that I think that Russians definitely agree on is that if you're really, really wealthy, you should have more responsibility to society. And in fact, that was something in the past that I don't want to screw up which Tsar did it and when it ended, but essentially in the past, one thing that made Russia great was that the nobility's sons generally kind of all had to serve in the military, whereas the peasantry, well, they would get drafted when there was a war, but ultimately this whole burden of having to be conscripted was really something levied on the wealthy. So essentially, I think the real idea of Russia building a society is a society based on fairness. That there is sort of a hierarchy, but the higher you go up, the more your responsibilities are. So it's sort of a would be an inverse proportion. So you're a flat broke nobody, your responsibilities to society should be low. If you are really, really rich and powerful, you're a governor of some state, your responsibilities and all that should be much higher. And that is interesting. Now, how can we make this deal fair? Because again, the equity crowd has tried time and again to make everybody equal. How exactly can we make a deal that everyone would find fair? That's probably going to be impossible. However, it's an interesting thing to work towards. Obviously, there is no deal that we could create between, let's just say, the owners of businesses valued over, I don't know, $1 million or $10 million. Let's go big, $10 million. Their relatives and all that versus the overwhelming super 99 point whatever percent of the population doesn't own a business of over $10 million a year in terms of profits. What kind of deal could we make? Could we ever make a deal that would suit both sides? No. But, because if we go back and look at Russian history again, this whole thing of, well, you're the son of a rich guy. Either give up the riches or welcome to boot camp, soldier. Stuff like that could definitely be maybe accepted by the majority. Something to think about. Something that I think we need to think about. Because, again, as Russia goes forward, like the philosopher... like the philosopher who cannot be named mentioned recently, he kind of made this post, which a lot of people didn't understand, but I got him immediately. He mentioned that even within Russia, whether we know it or not, Nas was a rapper in the 90s, whether we know it or not, a sort of liberal lives inside of all of us. Some people know it, but they don't really have an answer to it. Some people don't know it, they think it's bad, they don't believe it's inside them, but it is. And he's essentially referring to the fact that we've sort of been brought into this liberal way of doing things. I think one fancy term for that would be paradigm, but I might be using that improperly. Setup, system, way of thinking, and that even though in Russia people are kind of rejecting it, they don't really have this like framework to think about how they could live differently. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this first episode of this series, and hopefully we'll continue it on. Because, again, it's kind of what I wanted to do with this channel when it first started, but I need to start getting I'm stuttering today really badly. But I wanted to get the donation machine going. Because, doing some sort of weird idea-based project when you have 0 YouTube viewers versus 10,000 or whatever there is, even if only a few people watch the videos, it's kind of a big difference, and I think the donation machine is happy. Maybe some of you would like to donate. In fact, hopefully I won't screw up my screen here, and I'll have to log in. I haven't used Boosty in so long that I had to log in my page. So anyways, again, I'm just going to throw this out here. Right on the main channel. If you are enjoying the live stream, make a donation. So, anyways, remember the Boosty was changed to being related to the American Village. I thought that was more appropriate. But anyways, yeah. So there you go. And there's actually a message. Okay. So, anyways, fantastic. Yeah. So, anyways, this is kind of one of these things where I understand that it's kind of strange, and there's like, wow, there's like 30 people listening. This is awesome. This is, again, way more. See, this is one of the reasons I had to wait, so that way people would actually be here. So anyways, guys, in like 2 minutes, I'm going to open the show up to calls. I'll read comments if there are any, because I kind of said my piece on this. Because, again, this isn't, unfortunately, I wasn't gifted with the brains of the philosopher who cannot be named, or to be honest, if you think about it, I know I personally don't like Marxism, but the guy was able to lay out his ideas in a very attractive package. I'll put it that way. Unfortunately, as I get older, every year I think I'm going to write some sort of Kirby manifesto about my political thinkings and sort of way of thinking, because everyone always, the people who know me from the articles I've written, tend to tell me they have a very strange or unique way of viewing the world. I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm saying that people really say that. Of course, that's only the people who are really more into like the Tim Kirby Russia hardcore, and especially my work for the Strategic Culture Foundation. I should say my honorariums that I received from the Strategic Culture Foundation. I was never an employee, to be completely clear, and never would be. Hopefully I'll go back there soon. But anyways, the people who are really fans of that have always been like, why do you see things this way? You have a weird way of seeing stuff. And so anyways, with this series, before I leave this earth forever, we're going to try to maybe put together in some of these live streams. Don't worry, some of the live streams will go back to normal stuff about Russia, about the war, about concrete issues, current events, some stuff that's about, life in Russia. That's fine too. The more concrete stuff. But this is, to be honest, what I think about and I'm maybe most excited about is ideology. And maybe you might not have found today's live stream that interesting about this weird breakdown of the concept of equality, equity, and the possible Eurasian Russian alternative being fairness. Well, this is what I think about all day. This is when I'm not working, the kind of stuff I think about. And people say, in theory, all the time, that they want to get to know the people they follow on YouTube and Telegram. They want to get to know them as a person. Well, this is kind of the stuff I've been thinking about, and hopefully you guys can rip me apart, criticize me, and over time we're going to take these videos and maybe turn this into something, or maybe even turn it into a book, an actual book. That would be the best thing. But I've tried to start writing this book so many times, and I think sort of talking it out first always helps. I feel like now, if I had more free time and I could inject myself with energy drinks directly into my veins, after talking to you guys about this, I feel like I could write an entire chapter in that book that'd be really cohesive after all this. So anyways, now is talk time. I'm going to see if there's any comments whatsoever. I can't believe 30 people are watching this live. This is a major achievement for me to be able to talk about a purely ideological and abstract ideological subject, because this is something about the future. This is not about ideology that has happened. This is something we sort of could be trying to do in the future. Let's see. Are there any comments, or does no one care? Okay. It's not working correctly. I hope that's not to me. Okay. Either I will implode at home politically, or they will. What? I don't. Okay, I'm lost. Live stream is on Telegram, though okay, some Telegram problems. So I did Caitlin Johnstone on Substack. Nice to see to link to her work if she's a real person. Well, okay. Let's see. Mo has India burning. Vice and show India has been engulfed in riots of the world's biggest democracy suddenly stripped away 2 million people of their citizenship. Okay, that is interesting, but that's not related to this live stream. Haven't caught the live stream in a while. If you could talk about women, sex, and status in Russia. Well, here's the problem, my friend Max. That is a very good comment. To be honest, one thing that would probably be one thing that I would be capable of doing, but I don't think the donation machine of various really super ultra serious Russian people would appreciate is for me to turn this into sort of what they call the manosphere or red pill content. Trust me, I can do that. I always got a lot to say about relationships and stuff, and as someone who went from being a complete total loser beta male virgin to being experienced, as Jimi Hendrix would put it, the experienced, but in a sober way. I definitely have a lot to say on those particular topics, but they have to be done kind of carefully because Christ is listening. To be honest, I actually have been working with some guys. There's this really famous comedy sort of it's almost, maybe it's even a TV channel already. Well, it's called The Comedy Club, and it's almost like how in America you have like Saturday Night Live is the kingmaker of, or at least it used to be the kingmaker of comedians. You know, if you're a comedian against Saturday Night Live, you're almost guaranteed to be in some movie at some point in time, right? And so the equivalent of that is called the Comedy Club in Russia, and I pitched doing a sort of, but for Russians and in Russian, a sort of manosphere kind of program to sort of help young guys, let's just put it this way. The media really lies to us when we're young, even the Russian media, because a lot of it was American until recently. Still kind of is. And so I've definitely considered doing that, but more in the Russian language. I don't think that I could fit red pill content in here. However, sex is actually a big part of the politics, even though people don't discuss it. Yes, our freakish color-haired woke people do, but they discuss it in some sort of mysterious, women are oppressed. Okay, why? What is the source of this oppression? Men are bad. No. But sex does have actually a very big role to play in politics and in society, because if you literally will go back to our good buddy Joe, just for one little tidbit on that, you go back to Jordan Peterson, our good buddy, that what makes men have a much higher disagreeability and aggression than women do, and women have much more neuroticism than men do. So if you think about things in a political standpoint, just saying that, is it kind of surprising that, especially when their hormones and testosterone are at the peak, that a lot of times political change and violent revolution are kind of done by men aged like 16 to 25? Should we be shocked by that? And that's something interesting. So this is a political fact of reality. Trust me. You don't see too many... You don't see too many revolutions where the average person with the gun in their hands is a lady. You really don't. There's some exceptions to that rule, but overall there aren't. And that's a sort of really in-your-face example about how sex actually affects politics. Also, men and women's brains deal with decision-making differently. And women vastly prefer to sort of make, especially major life decisions, as sort of part of committee thinking, and men don't. So that's another thing that could have a very interesting impact on politics, just the simple fact that the two genders have different decision-making processes. So There you go. But anyways, we have some more. If anyone wants to call, you remember you can use the raise your hand feature at every live stream, even if it's something weird and ideological like today. Like we're going off on the Eurasian deep end here. We're going into the equivalent of the Eurasianist equivalent of when they have these like lesbian think tanks and they try to figure out how to get rid of men. This is the equivalent of that. So if anyone wants to use the raise their hand function, they can ask me a question about anything. It doesn't have to do with anything I've said about equality, equity, or fairness, as the Russian alternative to said. Uglerod wants to talk. I would have to assume you're going to be talking with an accent. Uglerod, hello.
Hey, Tim.
Hello.
I had a quick question for you. I was talking with some Russian guys a few months ago about, they were calling it the Russian equivalent of diversity, equity, and inclusion, except they called it a quota. Do you have any experience with that, or can give me some insight into corporate life in the Russian Federation?
The important thing is, what was the conversation about?
About companies hiring specific demographics of people as part of reaching some type of quota. They told me that there is some type of tax incentive for businesses in the Russian Federation where they could hire, disabled people or veterans.
Do either of them own a business and employ people?
No, they were speaking from the perspective of an employee.
Fuck them. Tell them from me personally, go fuck, not you, but them, go fuck yourself. From me personally.
Fair enough.
Because that is just the usual, dude. I'm sorry. Why I got angry. No, I'm not angry at you. You're a wonderful person. I
hear you. That's why I wanted to ask.
But let me tell you why I get angry. Because it's this stuff. It is this. When foreign people talk to Russians, it's the inferiority complex. They have to try to convince you that Russia is a shitty country. They just can't hold on to it. They have to convince you that everything here is awful. There is no diversity quota. There is the opposite where, like in America, you can't specifically not hire someone because of their racial background or whatever. But everyone knows that people, especially like in Russia, when you rent out an apartment, people do it by race and their ethnicity all the time. Like if they're Armenians, they'll only rent to other Armenians. Russians only rent to other people who look Slavic. This happens all over the country. And any attempts by like the Yabloko party or whatever to fight against this, of course, don't work. There is no there is no Russian affirmative action. That is an outright and complete total lie. And the reason they're doing it is because they want to, on their knees in front of you, convince you that their country's a piece of shit. It's probably also partially why they're
some Moscow liberals or something.
I don't know if they're liberals, but they definitely want to. One of the reasons why these guys do this kind of thing is it justifies why they're losers. You see what I mean? It's kind of like, well, no one will give me the job of my dreams, and no one will do this. And I don't know, dude. If you want, here, how about this? Free country. If you could try to actually find people who are business owners, ask them if they had to have some sort of a quota of whom they hired, because I've been in a lot of companies in Russia, and I don't see diversity hires. Okay, I worked in the video game industry at one company that was here. I'm gonna mute you, not because you're a bad person, but well, I'll let you back on. I'm just starting to hear background noises and lose my train of thought. Okay, so I worked at like one company that became part of a holding that was bought by another company. None of that. I have worked or done work for every pretty much like every TV channel. I was at Tsargrad. I've done stuff for RT, a lot of stuff for RT. Where else have I been? I briefly was on Ren TV. It might be hard to believe, but I was briefly there with them for a bit. Terrible job. I was at Radio Mayak, so that's Lighthouse Radio. There were no diversity quotas. None. At Radio Mayak, well, first off, my manager there, or the guy who sort of managed the station, happened to be a Tajik by chance. So that he was the diversity hire and he was the boss. And it wasn't just a matter of maybe there was no discussion of it. It's never, ever, ever been an issue anywhere. That is ridiculous. absolutely ridiculous. If they could maybe try to quote the law, but then again, Russia known base, because that's another thing that I just had a discussion with someone. In fact, maybe the next live stream is going to have to be about this very topic. Is that even if there might be something on the books, no one does it. Like the laws they really aren't super enforced in Russia. So I don't know. That just that really brought down the mood because it just and also why does anyone have a strong reaction to something? See, let's analyze me, the psychopath. Is because another reason why I had a very extreme reaction to this is because it undoes my work. Remember, I've tried to kind of both professionally and as a hobby really try to show people Russia and be a bridge and defy the mainstream media's demonization of Russia and all this. And then these two dicks pull shit out of their ass, and so that's why I'm also personally offended, because it's against everything I'm trying to do. So anyways, Uglarod, you're welcome to come back on and continue talking if you want, or if someone else does. Sorry for the potty mouth. I get angry sometimes. Oh, Uglarod does want to come back. So hello, okay. Welcome back. And what else did you want to say? And remember, for everyone else, you can comment by just writing a question anywhere on the Tim.
So I'm in the middle of a 3-month job search in the United States.
Oh.
And over half the companies, when they present the EEO survey, part of American Job Search, as you know, they ask me crazy questions like, are you LGBTQ? What race are you? What are your pronouns? So I can expect to see none of this in Russia, right?
Yeah, well, again, you're okay. Again, let me just kind of mute you there. So here it is. Okay, so here we go. Before God, I have signed a ton of work-related contracts, be it as an actual employee, so that would be RT, or, well, to be honest, Radio Mayak never considered me an employee. They considered me like a permanent independent contractor, but it's basically the same thing. Tsargrad TV, Christian sort of news, actually an ideological channel. Not surprising, given the chance to talk about ideology. I had the number 1 and number 3 program on the channel about ideology. But anyways, so we have those where I was sort of brought in the spirit of being an employee. Again, I've gotten a lot of honorariums for being on the program that the People's Front does, for writing for the Strategic Culture Foundation. I've done 1 million little jobs for doing voice acting work for all those crazy video games. So you're talking about all sorts of different work contracts at every level, from a one-time job to actually being an employee. Question of having to write what race or ethnicity I am, not one time. Before God, I tell you, not one time. Now, because in Russia, due to the way that people's first, middle, and last names are formulated, there's no way to hide your gender unless you have some sort of really weird name like Fukumanoso Popoladoso, and you're from some sort of tribe somewhere, right? Then your name makes no sense. Other than that, there's really no way to hide your gender. So, yeah. So I guess maybe you could say that there's gender-based hiring practices. But then again, remember, even though people have wacky names nowadays, if you see someone that's like, let's take someone let's try and think of a weird one. Maybe they have a weird last name like Umgaposo. But he's Mike Umgaposo. Do you think he's a guy? So I think in America we still have that, but maybe not necessarily. Ever since my mom met a woman named Kevin, all bets are off. But so anyways, besides maybe gender being implied due to the Russian naming structure and the way the language works, there's nothing about ethnicity. There's absolutely nothing of the sort. I mean, start asking around maybe some people in Russia, like English teachers. Have any of the English teachers had to write like what race or ethnicity they are, and have they been denied the opportunity to teach English because of that? It just doesn't exist. Man, this is a fascinating topic. I'm literally sweating. I'm so angry at those two guys. I'm just dripping here. Excuse me. This is very. I have the vapors, as the ladies would say in the South. I am right fired up now. Not going to go to sleep anytime soon, that's for sure. But anyways, I'm going to read the chat then. If anyone would like to come back on the program with some further comments, you let me know, including Uglarod. If you want to come back again, we'll do it. I'm sorry, when I go on these sort of monologues, unlike Dave Ramsey, I don't have an editor who can sort of bump the volume and then bring you back and this, that, and the other. Let's see, Chris. Alex Craner was discussing natural law recently. Would you say the Russians have retained a better concept of natural law while Americans have lost any coherent understanding of right and wrong? Natural law. What is law? There's so much more to learn in our path to true liberty. Again, well, if you want to talk about true liberty, liberty and Russia don't really go super hand in hand, because liberty is, being freed from the government. But for Russians, in a lot of ways, they don't mind or actually think that people should have obligations. So, yeah. Let's see. Let me do a quick search here. Okay. So who we have? We have Alex Craner and we have natural law. Let's take a look at that. What does Magic Computer have to say? Alex Craner, natural law. Let's see. On Substack, there's something. It'd be real nice to have something. Okay. Anyways, truth exclusive. No. One of the section came with a better way. Cause what is law? Boy, this is someone actually talking more about themselves. Okay, let's just try with what is natural law. Let's get a definition for this. Natural law is a system of law based on a close observation of human nature and based on values intrinsic to human nature that can be deduced and applied. Russian bureaucrats don't, but the average Russian masses do. Kind of, as long as that natural law is a little pessimistic. Okay? This is kind of a nuanced one, because the way this is like worded, I see it as someone being like, again, there is a real psychological tendency. In fact, I have one really good friend, and he is a big, I don't want to say advocate. He's fascinated by this idea that, for the most part, even animals would rather get high than not get high. That this tendency for people to become addicted to stuff or drink their lives away or whatever, it seems to be a very inherent part of us. And so if we look at things from that definition of natural law, then you would get into sort of libertarianism being natural, because it's like, well, people are just gonna, drink a lot anyways, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So laissez-faire. Whereas Russians would be like, nope. If it's human nature to be self-destructive, but self-destructiveness is kind of bad for society, fuck them. That ain't happening. You see what I mean? That's the thing where I think I actually kind of I did Scott Ritter's program, and then I went on the podcast of Mr. Norman, who helps him a lot and does a lot of podcasts with him. And I know they seem to be kind of weed heads. And I really used a bad example of how Russians will never legalize weed ever, because they have a different sort of mental mentality. And I think I kind of really left a bad taste in their mouth, so bad that they never called me back. That was a huge mistake, because I would love to go back on their program. Great people, great program, but I think they took what I had to say real personal, when it wasn't personal at all. I like all of them very much. Oh well. Live and learn. But so anyways, yeah, this whole thing of natural law, the way it's worded, at least online, perhaps, remember, not all definitions online are accurate, but the way that's worded, no. I would say maybe Russians are more realistic about human nature, but the interpretation of human nature is not obvious. Not at all. So let's see. We have a little quote here. Well, just a big quote. Holy moly, it's a beast of a quote. Maybe we can start it. This is from the same post by Alex Craner. It's a quote from... No. Truth eludes us if we do not concentrate our attention totally in its pursuit. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Trust me. Alex Craner is not listening right now, but if you talk to someone who lives in Russia with pro-Russian views and you bring up Solzhenitsyn, that is not a good way to start the dialogue. That is not good. Uglarod wants to talk again. Hold on, Uglarod, just 1 minute. Let's deal with this message here. One of the discussions came at a Better Way conference in Bath last month, and which pretty much blew my mind was the question of law. 3 of the speakers on my panel delivered their remarks on the subject, shedding light on issues I never gave much thought before. It was a striking experience, blah, blah, blah. For me, the effect, and see one other person. Oh, man, this is very wordy. This is very wordy. No, we're not doing it. Okay, Uglarod, you're the only guest today. We should have done a one-on-one interview. You're back, man. Let's keep it going. Let's maybe get a little bit more into a dialogue.
I was just going to say, on the topic of Solzhenitsyn, in my opinion, he is a traitor. And as far as Nabokov goes, which is a very renowned author in the Western world for obvious reasons, but he is a rare fag. And as far as Western or USA cultural values goes, I've witnessed a progressive degradation of things in this country to the point where the general attitude of people is, they say, well, if it feels good, if it pleases you, if it gives you pleasure, no problem, go ahead, do it. Whether that's, rampant sexuality or the use of drugs and so on, it's just totally open here.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what is the thing in Russia. Is it's like one of the things I brought up. Was it the last live stream about how the ban of the whole LGBT propaganda thing? Well, that really seems to violate the whole concept of freedom of speech, but everyone likes it. And society agrees with it. So again, it means that Russia is actually in some ways operating on some different dynamic. And this all makes sense to people. So essentially, the framework is liberal, and it should be okay. But it seems like Russia operates within a different, actual, invisible system of reasoning that we don't really see and isn't codified, but is forced to be part of an official liberal code. It's very fascinating. Again, if you are someone who likes to, the Russian word for it would be pizdit. I don't know how to translate that, but let's just say express his opinions about ideology. Anyways, Pete wants to talk. Pete is back. We've had Pete on many times before. Hello, Pete. Have I lost my mind? Is this a terrible direction the channel is going in? Are you unsubscribing tomorrow?
No, I'm not unsubscribing tomorrow.
All right, well, that's good. If I lost you, I'd lose everything. You've been here from like the beginning, man, so thank you.
Well, thanks for remembering me. I feel flattered.
Well, yeah.
So I've been in Moscow since October of last year. I just kind of wanted to check in with you. I've kind of just been floating, in the background here. I know you're doing your thing and I'm doing mine, and unfortunately our schedules don't seem to interact. I haven't seen some of your notifications recently.
That's okay. It's looking like again. So for for the sake of the audience, again, is I've have at least 2 months of no American football. We definitely have 1 month off. I'm going to take another month off in the preseason and really focus again on this channel and getting the American Village done. I think in August, American football took up a ton of time because we went in the playoffs. And then there's a problem where basically I had to have my daughter live with me, which was cool, and her friend did, and it was all cool, but it kind of was just like I was like, okay, I took a vacation basically. I was like, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, and so I essentially lost the entire month of August, which definitely hurt the American Village. And it maybe hurt this channel. So again, with my schedule, I'm going to try to do a lot more streaming for the next 2 months, and then we'll see later. Oh, okay. Now you're here on video. I hope. Oh no, I can't see you. No, why is that happening? Oh no, I can't see you on the actual recording. Oh, that's one of these mysteries. Hold on. I think I might have a solution. No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's 100%. Not that. It's 100% my fault. Anyways, if I click this magic button. Ooh, the camera went out of focus. Come on, camera, stop it. Click the magic button. Oh no! Now you're in an infinite loop of yourself there. Oh no!
The barber
I'm
mirrors.
sorry. You're just going to have to remain a mystery. I'm going to have to work this one out. I'm sure there are some
No,
technical
that's
wizards
cool.
out here who understood exactly why that just happened. Well, I understand why it happened, but I was hoping it wouldn't happen. Anyways, dude, there's going to be more live streams coming up, at least for the next 2 months. We're going to get this subscriber base going. We're going to get more YouTube subscribers. And again, we're going to have more ideological stuff, which makes me happy. But anyways, you tell me about you're now in Russia for about a year. Were there any sort of surprises along the way during this year?
So things are never really what you anticipate they're going to be. You know, you have your imagination of what things are going to be like, but you never really know until you get there and you experience things yourself for what they are. Anyway, unusual for an American like yourself, you and I mean, I'm very interested in foreign policy and international relations, and these are the most important things that I think about when I vote for president, but unlike 99% of the American population. So
Yeah.
when I meet people here in Russia, I mean, they're mainly 20-somethings and 30-somethings. Even last night at what they have, Katie O'Shea's, there's an English language meetup there, and a lot of the people in Moscow, not to your surprise, I'm sure, but many of them they're just liberal. They don't really understand what's going on, or they totally accept the Western version of events.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why they're so excited to learn English. Their soul is over there. You know what I mean?
Already kind of a captive audience in that sense. So I
Yeah.
get it.
Well, so
Not all of them.
so in some ways, you're talking to these people, and you feel like you're living your dream. Oh, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Let's see if you see. We'll see. Will you agree or not? You are kind of living your dream, and then you're talking to all these people, and they're just beating your dream down with a hammer.
Well, maybe not in those exact terms. It's just, I didn't want to leave America. It's not normal to have to leave your home so that you can get married and start a family, but this is exactly what I had to do.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, if they wouldn't have put the squeeze, they being the Marathon Gas Company, on my grandfather, what should have happened? I should have turned 18, got that car mechanic's license, inherited my grandfather's gas station and repair shop, and I should have been fixing cars and be happily in the middle class, obeying the law with the wife and the kids and the house, and maybe even, who knows, like a motorcycle or something. That's what my life should have been. And then all of a sudden, here comes the 80s. And all of a sudden, I'm hanging out with petty thugs, gangsters, and crackheads. During my teenage years, you know what I mean? So yeah, like, dude, I'm also here as a person of circumstances. Like, that's one thing I try to make it clear, because a lot of Russians sometimes don't understand that. Like, I have to be fair that bring up this is a good one. One guy who was I met, who was a real cool guy. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but a friend in high school. Like, his dad was one of those like ultra rich people, so paid for his college. He bought my buddy like a house, so he had a college paid off. I think he had a house paid off. So he essentially had his entire life like laid out for him financially. Would he leave America? No. No.
He inherited
Yeah.
his business. He inherited the business too, but
Yeah. So sometimes, so I think maybe I could be a little bit more of this, like, I'm Mr. Russian loving guy. If I would have come, like, if that guy would have said, no, I'll give it all up because I have seen the vision, the way of the Putin, and come here, a long time ago and give up all that stuff. But for me, it was like, what am I going to give up living in a rented house that retains no heat in winter in Pittsburgh, surviving off like cheeseburgers because that's the only thing I can afford? Like, what did I lose? Nothing. So, yeah.
I hear you.
But so, anyways, anything from a bureaucratic standpoint? Are you here on visas? Is that the thing?
I do have a travel visa. the issue has come up, a couple times in interviews. If I do have legal status, if I have residency, etc. And if need be, going to a language school will grant you a student visa that does technically allow you to work legally.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's actually required, it's not clear. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, to my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
yeah.
I technically never had the health declaration. That's something that you need to do within maybe 90 days of arriving here. It's never come up as an issue. One time I was returning home in the metro, and as I was leaving, this is in the wintertime, or just before the spring, I was asked for my passport, and they just looked at an old document that was kind of residency, but didn't work out because they ended up doing it for the wrong number of months. It shouldn't have been 5 months. It should only have been 3 months.
Yeah.
So what was a valid registration turned out to be totally invalidated. It didn't matter. Nobody really checks these things. Nobody's really looking to create an issue unless you're causing a problem. They're not going to dig deep. They're just going to check, look at your face, look at your passport, everything looks okay, be on your way. But if you're a problem, you're causing an issue, you're riding the metro or the tram without a pass, or you're riding the bus without paying, then things can get, bad.
Well, and that's very much one of the things I like about living here is it's what my former Peace Corps boss, when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, said, we don't want to catch you. That's kind of how things are here. Like, they're just like, oh, we're not going to go looking. But bad things can happen. Was one thing that I think is very bad for Russia's image is you probably have heard of him because he's kind of famous because of his look, like the Teddy Boy Greg, the guy, the barber who has like 1 million tattoos on his face, the rockabilly guy. Yeah. He apparently may get his permanent residency revoked because what I think is he got too famous, and I have a strong feeling that someone maybe on the sort of pro-Ukrainian side tried to fake rat him out to like the FSB or like make stuff up about him, because one thing that also is a factor of Russia is that a lot of times the authorities are lazy. So that's why one thing I also recommend with people is don't sit on visas. As soon as you get the chance to get this through and get citizenship, you want to do it. But long story short, I think he was sort of information attacked, and someone at the FSB was like, really research this and see if it's a legitimate claim. I just get rid of him. So, yeah.
To make it easy bureaucratically, don't have to do too much. Jugular strain, no research involved. Just
and that's one of the things about bureaucracy. Why, again, like we were today was sort of an ideological thing. Is one day we have to talk about bureaucracy, because essentially, if you this is what I'm imagining. I don't know. I'm guessing, but if you sort of put it where it's like you have an accusation and it's just easier to stamp okay, and if you actually have to then research the accusation, it's going to take days of work. It's going to push most people towards just clicking okay. And that's one of the dangers of especially Russian bureaucracy. So,
the one major thing that I had with bureaucracy is when, after 6 months, because I have a tourist visa, I have to do the visa run. And I took the train up to St. Petersburg, and then I took the bus to Ivangorod, and then I crossed on foot over the bridge to Estonia, and immediately walked right back, through customs and came back over the bridge. As I was exiting, they asked me to wait for an hour or so. Well, they asked me to wait with a number of other people in a separate room. They wanted to do some further questioning.
Yeah.
I wasn't alone. First, there was 6 or 7 people, then 8 or 9, and some of them were Ukrainians from the Donbass, an older couple that took the bus with me. Anyway, after waiting an hour, I was questioned. What are you doing here? Where did you go to school? Why are you here? Are you working? Do you have any military experience?
Don't tell them you're working.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I don't have a work visa, so and I'm not working. I'm just spending my savings like an idiot. And the guy just kind of smiled and nodded. I told him exactly what I tell everybody else, which is kind of funny that I'm here because America has gone crazy, and I want to get married and have a family one day, and it's not something I think anybody should do in America or Western Europe.
Yeah,
and
well, man, if I were you, I'd really jump on that goal. Not, I didn't mean that in a dirty way. I meant that in a more metaphorical way. Like, dude, VK Znakomstva. After they got rid of Tinder, and I think Badu doesn't work anymore in Russia, Got to do that znakomstvo thing. Got to start meeting those girls, buying those never-ending cups of coffee for that first date, man. Got to get going on that. So,
I to comment on that, I haven't had so much luck, just going to the meetups and chatting English with a lot of good people, a lot of cool people that I've met. But as far as dating and finding a love interest, not so much luck. There is a website called Russian-UkrainianWomen.com.
oh well, that's kind of a prostitution thing, but yeah.
No, I disagree with you. I've actually met women on that before, having lived in America and then come to Russia for a short vacation. The first 2 or 3 times.
Because
it's an option. It is an option.
Listen, if they're on that site, they want that type of person. They're looking for a specific. They're basically okay. So let me just put it this way: if a woman was she was meeting a guy. And she was looking. Would she want to go to a site that's like guys who like big boobs? Because that just means that this guy, his priority is the boobs. If he's going to sign up to that site, and with them, their priority is your citizenship status for whatever reason. You know what I mean? And because you're a foreigner, in their mind, and I'm a foreigner too. So remember, this applies to both of us. Because you're a foreigner, you're an idiot. Me too, because I'm also a foreigner. So even if you say, I like living in Russia, they'll be like, yeah, you're an idiot because you're a foreigner. Take me back to their country. Dude, that is the absolute worst place you could look for women. VK Znakomstva, go on VK, create an account, hit the Znakomstva thing, and you're just going to meet up. It's going to randomly meet you up with women who are on VK who want to meet people, and they want to meet a man in general. There's no specifics about where, and you're going to get a much more random segment of women who might just randomly want to talk to you and this, that, and the other.
I've seen it, and there's a free version that you can use. Yeah. The only issue is that I'm not 30 years old anymore. I'm in my 40s, and that free version, it only wanted to pair me up with women who were my age, who are, as a result, too old to have children.
No, well, then you might have to try Badu if it's still working, because Tinder has an age thing.
So maybe it's a matter of I need to upgrade to the pay version. I didn't check, but maybe it's another matter of needing to upgrade to the pay version. And then searching, for the women that suit me.
Yeah,
instead.
If it's like 200 rubles, you might as well set the age gap to be something like your 25 to 30, like those kind of women who are. It kind of depends. I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
I would say, for me, 30 to 35 is kind of the sweet spot, I guess. Because when women hit 30 years old, there's some urgency that kicks in.
You're gonna have kids. 35 is already kind of up there. That's when you're gonna have 1 or 2 kids. Yeah. So. But I'll tell you one thing, man, is as soon as you do have kids, boy, life gets a lot more expensive in Russia real quick. So
I would imagine so.
One thing to be aware of. But anyways, it's something you got to get going with because, that's your real only guarantee of staying here. And getting deported would be dreadful. So,
Yeah, I'm looking at taking another visa run in October, maybe go into Georgia because the food is so delicious. I don't know if any Americans listening out there who haven't tried Georgian food before. It's really great, and there are a ton of Georgian restaurants in Moscow. It's very popular.
Yeah. In fact,
something that I never heard of in America, though. Excuse me.
Near the Russia Beyond office, there's a place called Vaime, and it's really good. Well, it's good in the sense that it's designed to be kind of like semi-fast food, fast casual. So like you could stop in and get your little bit there. The sitsivi or whatever it is, which is hard to say, which is that like weird cold creamy chicken nut stuff. The white stuff. Oh, dude, sitsivi is where it's at, man. Because it sounds disgusting. It's like a cold chicken paste. Oh, but it's the best. Oh, love it.
I really love harcho.
Yeah. All right, there you go, man. Harcho is the best. Spicy beef soup. Anyways, dude, you got any other questions for me? Or I think we might move it along here. Or comments about your sort of almost first year here?
I would say for people coming to Russia that Ozon is your friend. If you need to find something and you don't know where to get it, instead of, trying to do it on foot, running here and there and everywhere, just try to find it on Ozon, which is kind of like Amazon.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I think it's named after it because in Russian it's Amazon and that's Ozon. So I think it's literally to be very extremely similar on purpose. But yeah, you can basically have all sorts of stuff delivered for free to some like pickup point, and you can just walk there and get it. I'm a little bit more of a Wildberries fan, but it doesn't matter. They're both the same thing, and they're both awesome. So, yeah, big fan.
Agreed.
All right, dude. All the
That's
best.
all I got for you, Tim.
All right. Stay with us, and we'll talk to you later. Okay. Uglarod wants to come back. I'm starting to get a little bit tired here, guys. I'm going to maybe talk to a couple of you here. Uglarod, you had something else to say. Then we're going to read the messages, and maybe I'm going to get out of here. I can feel my voice box starting to give up.
Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I hadn't heard about that VK service for meeting girls before, but I've always had great luck on Telegram and Chatruletka. Of course, it takes a lot of engagement and conversations and speaking in Russian to connect with those people on those specific platforms, but they're not necessarily looking for anything in particular. But I've made some great connections with Russian people, even on Telegram.
No, wait. Now, how on Telegram? You were using some kind of like meeting people something? What's going on?
Well, no, there's a website called Chatruletka, which is kind of the Eastern European version of Chatroulette.
Yeah.
And then, I ask, U tebya есть Telegram?
Well, that's probably a good way. Actually, that's actually probably a really good way to practice speaking Russian. That's a very good way. But again, meeting women, you want to be on some kind of dating app because then you're with that audience. You're meeting women who want to be met. You know what I mean? I think is the better way to go. But you never know because again, I'm gonna mute you here. Is that with a lot of female psychology, as I've noticed over the years, is that there has to be something magical about when you meet someone. And if there's some sort of randomness where it's like, oh my God, this weird foreign guy, I just went on this Chatruletka and there's this weird guy, but he's so interesting. It's so random. It's so mysterious. That mysterious random quality is something that women go nuts over. Like if, maybe I shouldn't be too personal about it, but I'll tell you this much. I've even had a relationship start because one of the exes there was given a small icon of Saint Nicholas, and she was told that he would bring her some sort of amazing gift into life, and that was me until she got rid of me. But until then, she had an amazing gift in her life, like that kind of stuff where it's like this crazy random chance, and for women that's like super romantic or something. And for women out there, men don't care. We don't care how we meet you. We don't care if we meet you in a very blunt, literal, direct way. We do not require magic to be satisfied in a relationship or excited about it. Max Aries also writes, how about status culture and male leadership fundamentals in a healthy Orthodox church-centric Russian? So that is like basically a question about family dynamics. That'll probably be another topic for this weird philosophical series of Eurasian ideas. That I even just saved your message, Max, because I liked it so much. So we'll talk about that in the future for sure. Go away, mosquito. A lot of mosquitoes this year. I even have the stupid nets over the windows, or the screens. Doesn't matter. They still get in here. The 5 inalienable rights. So you have a conscience, the natural law, and the next level of the hierarchy. So you have men and women, the people who are born into natural law, and you have from the very second that you are in existence, you have your natural law. This is where our inalienable rights and freedom comes from. There are 5 inalienable rights: the right to life, the right to travel, the right to freedom of expression, the right to privacy, and the right... Well, these weren't given to us by anyone. And no... Well, okay, so Chris is talking about that. So he mentions 5 rights, kind of your Bill of Rights sort of stuff. But they weren't given to us by anybody, and they can't lawfully take them away from us. So it's nice that you said lawfully, because unlawfully maybe a lot of governments can. But again, okay, you were given them, says who? How do you know this? How are there only 5? How is this determined? What is the sort of guarantee that that's the case? That's one of those things that is kind of like I would almost call like from what I've observed a Chinese argument is a lot of times Chinese people online they're like, I will make a bold statement that sounds nice. That's it. Nah, that's good enough. I mean that sounds nice, but like how do you know? How do you know that you have that? How do you know that that is the natural state of being? A lot of our liberal friends would say that everyone has the right to be loved. Why isn't that on there? Pete, I've been in Russia. Oh, we've already talked to you, Pete, about everything. Well, okay. According to some philosophers, such as John Locke and Thomas Jefferson, natural rights are inherent and inalienable. But again, about this thing about, because I even used the word natural, which is a dangerous word. So when I was talking about this pyramidal structure of society, it seems to apply to natural because it's a phenomenon that keeps happening no matter what people try to do, even to stop it. It keeps happening. Would then, we've lived a lot of human history without, like, the idea of individual rights? Or would we say that, maybe technically the king maybe could have killed his serfs for the fun of it? Maybe technically, but he didn't, and he couldn't have gotten away with that. So maybe there's some sort of a implied status that supports that. Like if we all go back to history's most famous female serial killer, Elizabeth Bathory, she was in the nobility and she killed a lot of peasant women, but eventually they barricaded her inside of a room to, I guess, starve to death, or maybe they fed her. I don't know, but she died from being barricaded in a room. And it sort of implies that even though that she was in the nobility, that maybe these poor peasants' lives had some sort of inherent value, even if it wasn't quite written down. Obviously our big religions tell us that life has some sort of value. So there is something to that in a historical context, but again, you sort of get into this thing where it's basically like the West's opinion about individual rights is an obviously natural phenomenon, and it is just so obvious to everyone. When I'm not so sure. Okay, so here we go. He continues. According to other philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, natural rights are not absolute or universal, but relative and conditional. They argue that people live in a state of nature where there is no government or law, and where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Human beings are a social animal. I don't know, do dogs have a social contract? Because they automatically tend to form into packs on their own, and cats don't, for the most part. So they're not a pack animal. So human beings are, I guess you could say, a pack animal, which is probably not a very nice thing to come out of a Christian mouth, but we sort of fit that. So we're naturally drawn towards each other. So do we sort of subconsciously then make a social contract? Do dogs? So again, these are some things where, as sort of a very particular 17th century way, or 18th century way, I should say, way of looking at things that has kind of changed. Over time. Positive law and natural law are two types of laws that have different sources and purposes. Positive law is the law that is made by human authorities, such as governments. Natural law is the law derived from nature, reason, or morality. Well, again, what is this natural law? Why is that necessarily natural? So, but can't then this positive governmental law also be made from reason or based on moral choices? I don't know. I think this is a way to just sort of justify. It's kind of like how Ayn Rand is a big proponent of her own ideas in the sense that everything she says is just the natural right way that things are, and that everyone else is a liar. It's kind of in that Ayn Rand school of things. Like, what was she famous for saying? Like, A is A. And it's like, and therefore, libertarianism is right. Down some sort of logical stream. A lot of things can be right down a logical stream. If you kick a chair, it goes faster. If you keep kicking a chair, it'll go faster than the speed of light. Anyways, Leo and I met when we were 34, and when I was 34 and he was 42. We had 3 sons, and I've been married now for 17 years. I had my first child at 35, and last 40 years old. That is, Chantel, a good point, but that means essentially you had a maximum of 3 kids. If someone is really trying to go hardcore and have like 6 kids, you have to start earlier. That's kind of the boat I'm in, because the woman that I met at that time was about that same age, and she was only able to physically have 2 children. And then the doctor said if you have another kid, there's a very good chance they'd be not in the best mental condition. Knowing the common Slavic man, I would say yes. Not that it is a consequence of deep debate. Oh, about this natural law? Maybe. To be honest, one of the frustrating things, too, about Russians is maybe it would be undiscussed or unthought about law. It's the law that dominates Russia. Don't really think about it too much. Make some stuff up. Whatever. Max says thank you. Thank you, Max. Chris also says thanks, but he says thanks to Mo. So anyways, thank you, Mo. Mo provides some interesting explanations there, so thank you, Mo. Very nice of you. Does anyone else want to talk? I wasn't even looking at the talkie thing. No one does. Yes, no. Sam, how long does it take to get your answer for the quota in the Moscow region? I believe now, now we're talking about laws, I believe the way it is now, it's every month. I think. But I could be wrong about that. I think it is monthly. It's definitely not yearly, that's for sure. It used to be yearly everywhere. I think it's monthly. Maybe I'm wrong and it's like tri-monthly in the Oblast, but in 1 month in Moscow. But I don't think it's monthly. I'm pretty sure it's monthly. So, but dude, Sam, you can't rely on that stupid quota. You can't rely on it, man. It's not a reliable option. It really isn't. You need to come up with a different plan. Unless you want to move to the absolute middle of nowhere. But then again, in the absolute middle of nowhere, the quota is like 20 people. And let's see. And we're not making these things up, Tim. It's what... And we are not making these things up. I never said you were. You quoted oh, you mean just about natural laws? It's what you'd learn in law school. Okay. If you were to have gone to a madrasa, I'm probably pronouncing that word very badly, let's say Islamic school, you would have learned that God has only one prophet, that's the Prophet Muhammad, and the interpretation of the Quran at that particular school is probably the only right one. And that was perfectly natural. Like, you just, dude, just because you go to a school and they say, not that we're doubting the authenticity of the Quran here. We do not poo-poo on the Quran. It's one of the great religions of Russia, and I have so many dear Muslim friends, and as someone who's read the Quran, deep respect. But I'm saying that if you go to a religious school, they will tell you that religion, regardless of what any religion, not just Islam, would be natural and correct, and to think otherwise is dumb. In fact, that's one of the things that made Christopher Hitchens become an atheist. The very famous atheist, super debate lord Christopher Hitchens, because in school they would always tell him, remember, he's a very old British person, he's dead now, but from old-timey England, basically all of the teachers would just say, well, this is natural, and this is natural, and everything, and Christianity is natural, and everything's natural, so it's supernatural, just believe in it. That was one of his big things, that big arguments as to why he became an atheist. Well, some is better than none. I only wanted 2. 1 boy and 1 girl. Yeah, some is better than none, and obviously, again, Chantel, this is the thing where we have a little bit of getting into about reproduction, all that. We are getting into what is effective versus what is the situation people are in. What is effective is women in their early 20s getting married and starting to have kids, and men being extremely pushed forward to be hyper aggressive. So that way, by the time they're 30 or something, they have resources and they're more mature. And that's where you get this ideal situation of you have woman in her early 20s, man who's successful in his late 20s, or maybe not super successful in his early 30s. They get together, they're able to have a lot of kids. That's what I'm talking about on a societal level. So that's what works for society. But sometimes things don't go in accordance with what would be best for society. But that's another question we'll deal with another day. Can you travel while waiting for your approval for quota? I'm pretty sure no. Unless you have to do the thing where you do the visa hop the border. But ultimately, no. You're supposed to live here to get residency. So ultimately, no. But if you have to hop the border, I believe you're allowed to. I ended up with 3 sons. Well, that's also good. I got 1 kid of both gender. I'm happy. That was kind of the I wanted to have at least 1 kid of each gender, so I'm thrilled. That worked out. It's a little bit easier relating to boys, but fortunately my daughter is actually a lot more like I am than my son. So Western school though I'm talking about. Yeah. Well, there you go. So anyways, no one wants to talk, which means we're gonna head out. My buddy was just able to teach me how you can buy Steam games in Russia. So I've been rocking my way through the affordable yet fun Warhammer 40,000 bolt gun. Bang, bang. So I'll get back to that and then I guess get to sleep because I got a lot of traveling to do tomorrow. Nowhere far, no videos, just personal stuff. So anyways, this is where I'm going to stop the recording. You all have a wonderful, amazing evening.